We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week by Iowa Democrat Abby Finkenauer. Congresswoman Finkenauer, appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you for making the time. Excited to chat with you guys today.
So for starters, want to talk about the thing that's probably been on the watch of a lot of people here within the DC Beltway really since July, and that's the prospect of whether or not more coronavirus relief can be agreed upon in these negotiations between the Trump administration and congressional Democrats, namely House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. As we sit here right now, it's a very fluid situation, but as we sit here right now, there's no deal, there's no legislative text, to look through right now. So I'm wondering, as we look through the prospects of potentially moving forward, I think it's safe to say something before the election is going to be a tall order bordering on impossible right now. But as we move into the lame duck, do you think there's potential for consideration in the lame duck session, or is this something that's going to get pushed into potentially into 2021?
Well, folks need help and they need it now. And it's why I supported a package just a few weeks ago that essentially almost felt like Democrats sort of negotiating even with ourselves, lowering the price because the Senate still hadn't really come to the table. And, I'm happy to hear how the White House and the House has been working well together in the last few weeks. And that is really, to me, encouraging to hear. But I really the Senate concerns me at the moment, just about how really unwilling they are to come to the table and get something done. It's been something that's obviously important here. This shouldn't be political. We're talking about people's lives here and in all different industries. It's our farmers, it's our restaurant owners, it's our small businesses, it's folks who are unemployed right now through no fault of their own, who are worried about paying rent and their mortgages as we're going into a holiday season. I mean, it is imperative right now that both sides get out of their corners and come together for the American people. And so I'm going to keep pushing, as much as I can, keep uplifting what we're hearing in the district to both Democratic and Republican leadership and telling them that this isn't just, dollars and cents on a page. These are people's lives right now. And it is so important that we just get this done and find ways to work together. It's the way that Washington should work, and it's the way that our democracy, quite frankly, demands it to work.
Congresswoman, how confident are you that there will be significant agricultural provisions in whatever bill comes out? The House bill that you talked about includes a lot of assistance for ethanol producers, livestock and poultry, local markets. The Senate Republicans have proposed $20 billion in assistance, but they don't provide the specificity that the House bill does. Similar amounts, but a different approach. But how confident are you that something like these will be in there?
The specificity is so important because of the fact that even when we saw CARES and then CARES 2, you had the USDA all of a sudden saying, "Oh, biofuels, that's not us. We don't, there's no relief from us on that." And that's ridiculous. That's what we saw from the USDA on that. And so that's why it was so important to me and a lot of my other colleagues who represent some rural districts where agriculture is obviously incredibly important to our economy, to our way of life here, that we have those provisions and we actually lay it out. And so that's part of when we're negotiating, we can't give up those specificities because it is so important. Because quite frankly, I've been, really frustrated with some of the different administrative agencies with how they've decided to dole out dollars. That's been one of the things that as I sit on small business, as I sit on transportation infrastructure, but specifically my role in small business, it's been oversight on the SBA, on Treasury, making sure that things are getting out in the right way. And so that's why, again, those details are so important. And we're going to keep pushing to make sure that that is laid out in the right way, in a way that shows up in the right way in this district.
As you know, with the assistance that's gone out so far and going out as we speak, government payments are going to make up about 40% of farm income this year. That creates potentially a big cliff on the farm economy in 2021, 2022. Is Congress going to have to provide even more money, more ad hoc assistance in the coming year? Maybe.
Yeah. So we fought in the House to make sure on that continuing resolution. We were concerned when we first saw it, and then really worked together regionally with a lot of folks in the House to uplift to leadership and literally to anybody who would listen how important the Commodity Credit Corp inclusion was, and that folks actually were able to get those payments and that assistance, because especially in my district, it's not just the ongoing trade war that's been taking a toll. It's not just the pandemic. We actually also got hit with a natural disaster, the derecho, which took out 10 million acres of corn. And so people are getting hit on all sides, specifically our agricultural community. And so the assistance is needed. However, what we need to be making sure we're doing, and this is what I've been trying to do since I got to Congress, is talking to our trade representatives, both Ambassador Lighthizer, but then also even the deputy trade representatives, uplifting to them about how important it is that we get trade deals that work for the United States and also are stable. Right? I think that is one of the biggest things right now. We're happy to see it looks like there's more purchases of soybeans coming out of China. We'll take it. That's great and happy to see that. However, I want to make sure that this is stable, that it's not just political, or it's not just around a certain time of year that this stuff is happening, that these are stable markets. These are markets that our farmers in Iowa built up over decades. And to see some of them go away as China continued to make better relationships with Brazil has been really tough over the years. And these are the things we're going to keep pushing.
So in terms of next year, in addition to the trade issue, you're saying that replenishment that Congress did of the $30 billion CCC account at USDA should enable them to take care of needs of the farm economy next year.
It's going to be a big piece of it, but then at the same time too, I mean, even when we're talking about the pandemic part and also the natural disasters that we've seen now in this country, I mean, the WIP Plus program is also going to be important there as well, and making sure that that has the funds that it needs, which is also something we're working on. I mean, we're going to need more supplementals when it comes to these disasters as well. So there's a lot that needs to get done over in the last now towards the end of the year, but then going into next year as well, just to make sure that folks are able to stay afloat. It's been tough. The stories we've heard, it's just, again, people want trade. They don't necessarily want aid. And we're going to continue to do whatever we can to push any administration, whether it's a Trump or it's a Biden administration, to pay attention, to do this in the right way, to build leverage with other countries and get deals that work and that are stable. Again, the stable piece is so important here because our farmers are faced with so much uncertainty every single day, every single year, whether it's flooding in Iowa, whether it's the derecho in Iowa. They don't know what the weather's going to be like. So we should at least have stable markets.
I also want to ask you about the last presidential debate last night. We had a section on climate change for the first time. And Joe Biden talked about his plan to shift Americans into electric vehicles. He's proposing putting 500,000 charging stations across the country. Question is this: that's raised some concerns in the biofuel community. how is there a long-term future for corn ethanol if America moves to electric vehicles?
Well, I think one of the first things we have to do is be absolutely realistic about what we can do right now to combat climate change and to actually cut down on emissions. And the biggest piece of that is even looking at octane blends, right? And plussing those up and using ethanol to do it. And these are things that we've been talking about that we'll continue to talk to literally anybody who will listen, including also things like improving our infrastructure for E15. I mean, I've worked on the Clean Fuels Deployment Act. That was one of the bills that I introduced. That'd be $600 million into the infrastructure for these gas pumps to be able to do it in the right way and plus up the way that they should. And so these are things we'll keep working on. And again, making sure that we're being realistic about what this looks like in the future. We can we can tackle climate change while supporting renewable fuel industry. That's literally one of the best ways to do it. That gives the biggest immediate impact right now that we're going to continue to push. And again, educate anybody who will listen.
Congresswoman, want to wrap up here today asking about, obviously we are a policy publication, have to ask about the election and some of the various things going on with that. We've seen since 2016 really a pretty vocal, pretty public effort on the part of the Democratic Party to do some more outreach to rural voters and potentially avoid some of the pitfalls that were observed in the 2016 election, specifically as we looked at rural vote counts and some of the disparity between Democrats and Republicans on that front. Wondering, as we kind of turn the corner and it's harvest time, so to speak, on those ballots as we look at the November 3rd election date approaching us. Wondering what are your expectations and what should we expect in terms of some of those Democratic efforts and what that might mean to some of these vote totals as we look at results coming in across the country?
Well, I'm not a prognosticator, so I don't know what, none of us really know what it's going to look like a week and a half from now. I think it's 11 days, not that I'm counting, but I can tell you this. The Iowa that I grew up in, where I grew up north of Dubuque in a town called Sherrill, we've got 4 churches, a bar called the Barn, and 1 stop sign, and more cows than people. And it is a town and a place that we care about each other. You care about your neighbors, you step up for each other. It's about our values. And I also had the opportunity to obviously represent even the city of Dubuque when I was in the State House. Now I represent 20 counties in this 1st district. And it is a mix of some of our city hubs and some of our rural areas. And what I know is when it comes down to it, our values are the same here. It doesn't matter if you live in rural Iowa or the cities, and we rely on each other. It's about stepping up for each other. It's about having policies that make sure when your neighbor needs help, that you're there for them, that healthcare is there for them. These are the things that we're going to continue to keep talking about because it's the way that I grew up here, right? Where hard work means something. And when there's work to be done, you say yes, and you just do it. You figure out ways to get it done. And so that's also what we've done in the last 2 years in Congress, that we're making sure folks in this district know as well, that's how I was raised. That's how I've gotten done in Congress with over 20 bipartisan bills. I don't care who you are, whether you're Democrat, Republican, if you're willing to work with me to help Iowa, I'm going to work with you. But if you go out of your way to hurt us, I am absolutely going to stand up to you every chance I get, because it is what, again, it is all about here. And it's also about, at the end of the day, watching the state of our country at the moment and state of our democracy and our politics. It's about being able and willing to come together. And I can tell you, after the last year and a half in DC, almost 2 now, it is necessary for the functioning of our democracy that we can get out of our corners, come together, and get things done. And I will continue to work on that. And again, I think that's what Iowa voters truly care about.
I suppose it's one of those situations where it's an expression I've used pretty commonly the last couple of months. We'll all be a lot smarter on November 4th, and then then we can all engage in our amateur punditry in a little bit more informed basis. But until then, obviously a lot of things to keep an eye on here in these next 11 days. But as you said, who's counting? But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher and Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.
Thank you. Take care and stay well.